So again, thank you very much. Oh, thank you very much.
Go ahead.
Thank you very much for joining this afternoon's session. We'll be starting the presentation in about 60 seconds. We're just waiting for a few more people to join, and then we'll kick off.
Sorry, Justine, what I was going to say is just in this silence, I was fully expecting one of the dogs to start going crazy out of character. So
no problem.
If somebody rings the doorbell, we'll be in trouble.
Isn't that an e-commerce delivery?
It's a good way to start.
Okay, just checking on the numbers. Please bear with us just a few more minutes, few more seconds, I should say, while we're waiting for a few more people to join, and then we'll start the session in probably 30, 45 seconds from now. And see whose dog barks first.
Yeah.
Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. It's actually great to see such a super attendance. As I'm sure everyone's already feeling a little bit webinar fatigued, and we're only in January 2021. So big welcome and big thank you for joining the session. And the session's about preparing for e-commerce in 2021. I'm Justine, head of the UK for Webscale, and I'll be your very, very informal moderator today. Just a little housekeeping. We are really happy to receive questions, so please just drop them into the Q&A or chat box, and the team will be answering them at the end of the session. So without further ado, I'm delighted to introduce you to our panel of experts who will be sharing their knowledge and insights around today's topic. So joining from Eclipse, we have Jed Azalis, Director of Business Development, and Tim Stainthorpe, Co-founder and Director. From Webscale, joining us from across the pond today, we've got Adrian Luna, Head of Strategic and Global Partnerships. And Adrian, at this point, I'd like to hand the microphone over to you.
Yeah, panel of experts, you set the bar pretty high, so I'm a little worried at this point. Yeah, so really quick, as Justine mentioned, I head up global partnerships here at Webscale. So a little bit of who we are. Webscale is a SaaS, a software delivered cloud management provider. We're extremely focused on e-commerce storefronts, specifically Magento storefronts. And we recognize just as a company early on that the relationship between anybody who's managing a hosting environment and the people who are responsible for the development of the brand experience, that relationship is just incredibly crucial to the health and success of these global brands that we support together. So we're extremely proud to call the team of Eclipse here partners. We're extremely proud to call them friends. These are precisely the caliber of guys that we love to work with in order to create that triangle of support to support the end users. So I don't think we'd be doing the audience justice without having speakers from both sides talk about these topics here. So with that said, I'll let Tim and Jed introduce themselves before I butcher anything.
Thanks, Adrian, and hello everyone. I'm Tim Stainthorpe, and as Justine mentioned, I'm Director of Client Services over here at Eclipse. Eclipse are a digital e-commerce agency who create high-value B2C and B2B e-commerce experiences using technology like Magento or SAP Hybris, to name just a couple. And it's where I've spent the last 20 years building, supporting, scaling really high-performant websites to meet our customers' demand. So I'm really pleased to join this panel today to share some of the insights that we've seen, and I'll pass the microphone over to you, Jed.
Thanks, Tim. My name is Jed. I head business development here in Eclipse. By trade, I'm an ex-solution architect, turned business exec, which often positions me quite well when working with clients on strategy and creating roadmaps, not just from business perspective, but also assuring technical feasibility and future readiness, such as scaling. And I'm sure we're going to be talking a lot about scaling today. Really pleased to be here today. I aim to answer your questions best I can. So back to you, Justine.
So thanks, gentlemen. So let's get started. Everyone keeps telling me 2020 was an unusual year. Maybe I missed something because I was locked down. I'm not really sure. But undoubtedly in 2020, for e-commerce, it was an extraordinary year. So to you first, Jed, what are some of the key observations that you can talk about?
Yeah, 2020, what a year. That I think, we might want to address the elephant in the room straight away. There was no other story like COVID. Like no other year compares to 2020, and it was just one headline that we see popping up over and over again. Almost overnight, school lessons and doctor's appointments were online. Yoga classes, concerts, and weddings were streamed via Zoom as well. So, companies must have questioned and had to adopt this and see, everything essentially what they knew about the customers has changed over a month. Because of that, some were hit much harder than the others. Some hit record sales as well. And we saw some inspiring innovation in that space as well. Some people's ingenuity shown throughout in these challenging circumstances. Challenging circumstances, they usually yield and set up, position people for some great innovations. Like, for instance, World War II yielded the first programmable computers and super glue. And, the different type of innovations we're seeing right now is, for instance, digital transformation. We saw in the beginning of all of the COVID, businesses did more in 2 months than they would have done in the next 2 years. And, with that, we saw a lot of pivoting of technologies. Let's say B2B businesses, they used to use proxy channels to sell their products, but they couldn't do it anymore because those proxy channels often were brick and mortar stores. So they decided to kind of take the leading role and create a direct channel for their customers and create e-commerce stores for themselves. Another really good use of innovation in the technology right now is augmented reality. One of our clients as well, they were struggling in order to sell sunglasses because when you're buying sunglasses, it's something that is very much, a huge personal choice. And it's all about the fit, how it looks, the color of it as well. And people couldn't just get the same experience when they were doing it online, when just looking at the pictures. So what that client did, they integrated the experience of augmented reality as part of their checkout journey. So you almost have to try the glasses on as you would in the physical stores before you proceed to the checkout. Which yielded to really great results, and they are loving it and keep going with that technology and supporting it. Another place of innovation as well, because of many people were hit, they had a little bit more time to spend in creating new businesses. And what we saw was that 50% more businesses were created in June 2020 versus the same month in 2019. And a record of 81,000 businesses were registered in July. So it's a huge difference comparing to all the other years. So in short, global pandemic has displaced how and where we work, learn, shop, and play. But it's displacement rather than replacement. At least that's how I see it. Because, even looking back at the holiday season that we just went through between Black Friday and Christmas, it's not that the shopping stopped. People still people still wanted to buy presents to put it under the Christmas trees or just share it with their friends and family. But all of those purchases, they were done online and it just remained the same. So again, it's this displacement rather than replacement.
So thanks, Jed. Great insight there. Moving on to Tim now, though. In the last 60 days during the holiday season, both our customers and our companies have learned a lot about this business. So with that in mind, what do you think are some of the major learnings that will help scale e-commerce businesses in 2021?
Sure, great question. So yeah, the last 60 days, well, the last 2 months or 3 months are really always really busy, but we saw some record-breaking numbers last year for obvious reasons. Retailers really had to adapt last year to the lockdowns in a variety of ways. not least those with stores had to close them for long periods, which meant that the online channels just became even more vital for their everyday revenues. It was a really sad situation for a lot of our retail partners. Really disastrous spring and summer for retail, especially across the fashion landscape. And for people affected by the pandemic, disposable income was really tight across the year. It was very difficult for people to go and research, browse products in stores to help make those purchasing decisions. So we suddenly found ourselves in a situation where customers and partners had seasons worth of stock. Suddenly that's not available for full price sale. So that tended to lead into quite heavy promotions across the summer to allow our customers to really shift the available stock that they had. And of course, they were also hit with some scarcity of new products, not least because in the UK we had the challenges around Brexit and what that led to in logistics, but also the impact that COVID had to logistics in people getting their raw materials from the Far East or from different parts of the world. So that combined with everybody trying to shop online, not being able to try stuff on, so buying multiple sizes or multiple colours, and then returning great swathes of product back to retailers, it was a huge nightmare for them to cope with that. So we were already running at really high demand, or higher than anticipated demand, ahead of the really planned peak pushes in November and December. But we were prepared for that because we do performance testing throughout the year. We make sure that we are always available to meet our customers' demand. But even to that extent, there were some real curveballs that came through. So focusing on the last couple of months of the year, clearly Black Friday is the big push for a lot of retailers around the world. And what used to be a single day of just mad buying, has turned into a week or a fortnight as retailers extend or stagger their offers to help handle capacity. But what usually happens after Black Friday is we see a kind of dip in demand as retailers go back to trying to promote full price products for people to purchase in the run up to Christmas. But this year was really different. We kind of, Black Friday started early in November and it didn't really end. It's kind of still happening. Some of those promotions are still in place across customers and across retail. But yeah, we saw a kind of prolonged demand, which meant that we were really serving customers highly performant pages for a lot longer than potentially was anticipated. And what that meant to raw numbers was really interesting. The year on year, we saw a 40% increase in traffic compared to previous seasons. And that's led to actually a 60% increase in online orders. And that's even through a period where, in the UK at least, some of the shops were still allowed to be open across the Christmas period. People still tended to want to shop online for safety reasons or for choice. So yeah, it was really interesting to see the last couple of months just be consistent demand all the way through November, December, Christmas period, and well into January. And 2021 doesn't show any signs of changing that pattern yet. We're still seeing high online demand. And it'd be really interesting to see how our customers and how retail deal with that in this year's for their discounting strategy. Are they going to be strong and try and hold on to full price, or are they going to resort back to heavy promotion to shift stock? And it doesn't really matter what they choose to do. We'll be ready to support them in that, because it's it's crucial that we continuing to invest in our scaling to meet that demand wherever it comes and be prepared for any eventuality, so we can provide that seamless performance and ultimately a really strong, highly converting experience for the customer.
Thanks, Tim. That's a great insight and some interesting statistics there. So apologies now to bring you back to the pandemic. But the question is along those lines. So during this unprecedented period, we've undoubtedly seen a significant surge in e-commerce traffic. I think none of us can doubt that. And I think my husband would absolutely agree when he hears the doorbell ring every day, he puts his head down, thinks, what's she bought now? But it's quite obvious that I think this trend will continue for a few months. And therefore, Question for Adrian. What are your impressions with regards to a merchant's readiness to manage this additional traffic without negating the performance of the website?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. Right. I mean, if we look at the context of the pandemic, I mean, a few more months, another year. I mean, we don't necessarily know how long things are going to continue this way, but in terms of e-commerce, I mean, the long-term reality, I think, is much more telling about what Tim was just saying, right? Buying habits have changed forever, regardless of when things open back up. So, when you mentioned retailers adapting to lockdowns, the lockdowns themselves were temporary, but this massive shift to online shopping, that's here to stay. And I think it was already trending in that direction. We've all seen it. It was happening throughout, driving up to 2019, going into 2020. And last year just acted as a major accelerant to get us where we were already headed, just a lot faster. I know personally speaking, I've started buying a lot of the same things that I've always bought before, but now from new online retailers. So, there's just so many options available to you that, we're creatures of habit, where you would go and make your purchases in the same intervals at the same places. Now those habits are broken, and it allows new online retailers to now capture a larger segment of the market from the consumers that they're targeting, right? So to echo a little bit of what Tim was talking about, I mean, a couple of those scenarios we also saw take place. So there were some retailers that may not have had any sort of online presence at all and needed to launch something quickly, so to be able to have some sort of rapid deployment, work with a development agency, say, hey, get me online, let me process transactions, and then let's work on a roadmap to get us where we need to be long term. And then we saw some others that already had online e-commerce presence, but they needed to make significant functionality improvements, for instance. So they needed to add curbside pickup or buy online, pickup in store functionality, custom shipping, fulfillment changes, things like that. And we saw others that just needed a complete revamp of the brand experience for their clients, things that they had intended to get to and just hadn't necessarily done it by the time things, started to drive to online business a bit more. I think more significantly for us, for the top end of the market, there was an already thriving online storefront community that suddenly started receiving, 5x, 10x, 15x of their usual traffic. They went from the low hundreds of thousands all of a sudden jumping up to, 250,000 visitors, 500,000 visitors per month. And we saw this happen firsthand across several different industries, especially in our client base. I know one that comes to mind, client that's in online beef sales, for instance, right? It's a perfect example of just an overnight surge in traffic in an already successful business model. You really couldn't predict this type of demand and the amount of people that drove to the storefront. And to your point earlier, it hasn't really stopped. It's just continued to go up, where typically you would see this camel hump of, marketing campaigns or something that's expected as a surge. And traffic would go up and subside and go up and subside according to when you were pushing, different marketing campaigns. But now, again, these things are just trending in a positive direction. And I think all of these scenarios that, to bring us back to more of a hosting infrastructure conversation that, quite honestly, nobody really ever wants to talk about or wants to talk about really late in the game in terms of getting online. But a hosting environment is the foundation of where all of these e-commerce storefronts live. So there's nothing like a massive influx in traffic that brings the importance of a really solidly built hosting foundation, the importance of it to light, right? So your initial question, to go back to it, was really about readiness. So, really and truly what we've seen is that the readiness starts at choosing to work with modern technologies, companies that are built for this new era in e-commerce. Hosting is not new, right? There's a traditional model of hosting a website, and that's usually done on some sort of shared service or like a dedicated server environment where somebody is stacking and racking with a finite amount of resources that they think is going to accommodate for traffic over time. That doesn't really translate well for e-commerce, and especially now, right? Those are the type of static server environments that will just fall over when they reach max capacity. They can't scale, they can't expand. There's no elasticity. So if you look at your traffic that goes up and comes back down and goes back up, you can't necessarily predict how high that's going to get and how low it's going to get. All you can do is create a watermark. And I think that's where you see things fall over in the traditional hosting sense. So we were already seeing a trend in e-commerce workloads moving into public cloud environments. And then, as I mentioned before, 2020 just was an accelerant, right? It just got people on the public cloud much faster and really nailed the point home about the need to have elasticity in the foundation, right? So again, all good points that you guys made before on this camel hump effect versus this linear upward growth model that we're seeing now. And it's precisely why we've hung our hat on the public cloud as the primary environment that an e-commerce storefront should be on. And here's the thing, right? It's a lot of technology jargon. It's a lot of talking about servers and infrastructure environments, things that storefront owners don't like to talk about and typically aren't comfortable with talking about. So from a business point of view, what does all of this mean, right? It means that working with an elastic, scalable environment built in the public cloud, built for e-commerce, really to accommodate the exact application and use case for your specific storefront. What it means is now you see the performance increases at scale. The availability of the storefront continues to go up, and overall, really cost decreases because you're not having to build this really big beefy environment that you don't necessarily need all the resources for at all times, and you're not really staying over provisioned on a static server. So if nothing else, from a business perspective, I think the return on investment is tremendous with getting into an environment that can be as elastic as you need it to be when you need it to be.
Yeah, well, just to chip in there, Adrian, you made a point there about the merchant. We don't really want the merchant to have to worry about that elasticity or about that scaling. They've got enough to worry about in terms of merchandising, getting their pricing right, seeing what their competition is doing, ensuring that they can get their goods shipped to the customers. The last thing they want to do is worry about, is the website going to fall over? So that's where a strong partner like Webscale and Eclipse come in. We just handle that. We've had a call last year, where we needed to double capacity. And that's a couple of flicks of switches and a couple of hours work for some of our cloud ops team to do that. In the olden days, that would have been, let's procure some servers, let's procure some racking equipment. It would be a big monumental project. Those days are gone. And our job is to make our merchant partners look good. And we were really able to scale up and meet that demand in 2020.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like you mentioned, right? I mean, I mentioned the beef sales company. Like we need them to just focus on what the business model was created for, what the online storefront was built to do. I mean, that goes for every sector, whether you're selling shoes or whatever it is that you're doing, right? The end user, the end merchant should only have to focus on what their business model is focused on, and let us take all the technical requirements and keep them online and keep them fast.
So thanks, guys. Great insight, and I particularly love the camel hump analogy. So, so Jed, are you awake? Because the next question's coming to you. Magento has also had a momentous year in 2020. So, as Eclipse are recognised as one of the leading UK and probably global partners for Magento, I'd really like to get your input on what innovation you see happening, changing, or coming out of the Magento camp in 2021.
Yeah, really good question. I think it's kind of like an extension to one of the points that I mentioned earlier as well, that we saw so many businesses starting to come to life in 2020, and many of those businesses, they were exactly after Magento solutions. Like one of the world's oldest lock manufacturers came to us and they said, hey guys, we need to do a new website. And it was a typical example when they were struggling to do the sales that they wanted to through B2B channels, and they wanted to have a B2C presence. So we kicked off that project completely remotely, and the discovery phase and all of the communications that had to happen, that was remote. So forget the whiteboard markers, forget post-it notes. You have to sit on your calls, spend the entire day, and we done it. And in all fairness, I think that was one of the more successful projects that there has been in history. So it didn't feel like and Magento did position us to do that, and it didn't feel too much of a barrier doing it all remotely. But I think one of the key takeaways of that is that people had to spend a lot more time doing these kind of things, Zoom calls and video and chatting and using the technology constantly. Forget, board meetings, forget going and speaking to people in a physical space. So because of that, I think everyone, got used to so much of seeing this web pages, seeing the designs of it, and almost started to notice the templating that is going on behind the scenes. Like, for the lack of a better word, some websites, they're a little bit lazy when it comes to that. You use the template and you just batch it out across. And that's exactly where Magento came in, because Magento follows that headless approach, so that all of the standard functionality that e-commerce comes in, managing your products, pricing engines, product catalogs, just to name a few things, you shouldn't worry about it. What you should worry about is the UX, UI, what, the components, what makes you, you. And exactly that's where the headless comes in. So you can build that brand presentation the way you want it to. And again, it's like, if you take that headless approach, it works multiple ways. It's like, it's all separated. So there is this front end, then you get to the back end, then you can add other tiers into it. So almost building this microservices architecture. And the beauty of that is that you can scale each of these independently. And if there is a traffic increasing and somebody is asking for promotions, then exactly for the promotions engine can scale instead of scaling the entire monolithic application. So Magento has been really shining through it. And I think one more point that I wanted to kind of add on top of that headless and uniqueness as well, you've been seeing a lot of traffic that is going into mobile, like through mobile. People no longer use desktops as they used to. This has started happening a long time ago in China, Asia as a whole, and it's very much is here now in the West. Simple reason being that, when you're buying a mobile device, it's not cheap, and traditional families, they don't really need a desktop or a laptop when you can do pretty much the rest of the stuff on your phone. So if you do have a good phone device, you might as well just do all of your shopping through it. So therefore, that PWA, so-called, is part of the Magento offering as well. So you can quickly create mobile-ready websites and scale them, as I mentioned earlier, scale them independently. So you're making sure you're not spending the money where it's not really being utilized as well. So yeah, so it's amazing activities that have been happening in Magento space, and all of these new companies that are popping up, they are going towards it, and I think that's the right approach.
Thanks, Jed. So from the sounds of it, Eclipse are and were exceptionally prepared for all these changes in the market. What do you think the key enablers were that you can share with us today? Perhaps, Tim, you can take this one.
Yeah, sure. So I think the three key points I'd like to get across and share today is capacity planning, performance testing, and security. Those are some real key areas, and I've got some examples here to explain why. So capacity planning to start off with. We at Eclipse view that as a constant activity, that this is not a one-hit thing. We have a duty to understand our customers' demand on really a daily basis. And we've got to adapt to the desire for our customers to trade, which means we need to be really agile and not be a bottleneck if they want to run a promotion at a particular time of day. We've got to be ready and able to meet that demand, especially right now. So being on a scalable cloud architecture is absolutely vital to underpin that, and it's got to be a core part of your strategy. If you're on the cloud already, fantastic, you're making some great inroads into that. But if you're not, you should get it on your roadmap now. Otherwise, you'll be left behind, or you'll be able to not adapt, and whereas your competitors will. So planning is essential, and we'd already planned for 2020 Black Friday levels a lot earlier on in the year, prior to the pandemic hitting us. So when overnight stores began to close and online became that single outlet for retail, traffic started to go crazy, and we were just ready for it. We were able to soak up that initial traffic and take that headache away from customers. They didn't have to worry about coping with that demand and delivering that seamless experience. And then the rest of the year was really a case of us running at a baseline of a kind of Black Friday 2019 levels. We were able to scale up the baseline of the systems, make sure that we could then add on to that the promotions that customers wanted to run to drive the extra demand. And we were really successful at doing that. Unfortunately, others, as I think most people are aware, were not so lucky. And I think everybody probably saw some of these horrible queuing systems start to appear. I think me especially, I got hit by a couple of these myself, and it's a really frustrating experience. And for me, who knows how these things work, it's a sign of a poorly architected system. They shouldn't be needed in this day and age. It shows a system that just can't scale. So very frustrating for your brand, and it could do brand damage. So again, something that can be avoided by good capacity planning and performance testing. So how do we do that? Well, we need to make sure that we architect the application to take advantage of the underlying cloud toolkit and be able to scale that out in all directions. Because only doing that means we can offer that seamless experience to customers at all demand levels. So performance testing, slightly different to capacity. Capacity is about making sure that we can get large volumes of customers through. Performance testing is where we want to make sure that we can deliver a consistent performance at those large volumes. So delivering large volumes at really super performance speeds, make sure that we can do all of that, and it will yield into highly converting customers. At Eclipse, we always make sure that we test for more than we're asked to. We want to anticipate where the next bottlenecks are going to be. So we always test for much higher models than we've seen or we've been provided with. The reason behind that is we want to find out where the next areas of improvement need to be, both in our application backlog and also in our infrastructure backlog, and get those onto the roadmap as soon as possible. Finally, security is one of the big things that we need to build into our testing, our consistent testing, and we should never lose sight of security. Not everybody on your website is a good customer that just wants to buy your goods. There's some really nasty people out there that are trying to take advantage, especially in this kind of pandemic situation that we're in. So 2020 and 2021 and beyond, we're starting to recommend and see people taking up some of these new cloud enablers and technologies, like having a really high performant web application firewall or a WAF in place, consistently reviewing our code and our architecture for security improvements, especially ones provided by third parties that we rely on to underpin some of our applications, because nobody wants to be in the news for a breach. That's disastrous to your brand. So as well as those testing areas, there were another couple of things that I'll just quickly touch on that helped us last year. One of them is always designing our merchant sites with easy toggle switches. What I mean by that is the ability to kind of turn things on and off, or our customers having that ability to turn things on and off. So a great example of that is in the UK, our Prime Minister announcing a lockdown on a Sunday evening that would take effect the very next morning. So that wasn't a problem for our customers affected. They could log into their application, turn off click and collect or next day delivery, and still offer the customer that seamless experience without having to take the site down or do any particular configuration or coding. We've also I was really proud of this work actually, that we were able to deliver some different front-end experiences, especially for user demographics that perhaps weren't as used to shopping online as people like ourselves are. So suddenly we're asking people who may never have used a computer before, or let alone shopped online, to be able to go and buy groceries or buy clothes or buy books. And we had to make that shopping and user experience more user-friendly for them. So again, UX is a vital part of the mix in being aware of your customer and making sure you can just reduce any friction that you've got in your journey. So being aware of your analytics, knowing where things are getting stuck, and being able to fix that really quickly to continue to offer that super performant, easy to use experience. So in conclusion, constant capacity planning, performance testing and security testing means that we're always ready. But also one thing to remember is just because your architecture is ready doesn't mean other parts of your supply chain are. So make sure you also push that capacity thinking and performance thinking further into your supply chain. We've seen examples of the website holding up to record-breaking volumes of orders, but what that's meant is further on down the line, there's been bottlenecks in logistics or in shipping. So it's pretty vital to have that overall view of the whole supply chain to make sure that any potential areas of weakness or bottlenecks are truly understood, and the capacity planning occurs throughout all of the partnerships that you've got in your system.
Tim, really quick, if I can jump in, you mentioned testing for readiness, and then also a focus on front-end user experience. I just wanted to highlight that really quick because I think that's something else that we've seen a lot of focus being placed on, right? I think user experience, user behavior, and the need for performance testing. We've always talked about it as planning for success, right? There's a lot of talk about disaster recovery and what happens when things fail, and how does environment fail over from one thing to another when a disaster hits. And I'd rather look at it and take the play that you guys are doing with testing readiness beforehand, right? And I think a way to take that a step further too is testing is no longer just about sending a large amount of anonymous traffic to a storefront and then handing a report back and saying, yeah, you guys should be good if you experience 2x or 3x your traffic, right? The front end user experience has to be modified by someone like you guys, because everyone's target client and the way that they behave, the way that they peruse a site to go from homepage all the way to cart and checkout is completely different. You have some that have a different percentage of logged in users. You have some that has a higher percentage of just anonymous traffic coming in, adding to cart, purchasing, and moving on. And I think the importance of being able to custom create a performance-based load test to say, hey, we have all of the analytics at this point, from back-end information to Google Analytics, traffic analytics. We can use these things to create a profile together about how your users interact with your brand, and then replay that through the storefront in a scenario that says, all right, now let's take your exact user behavior and the percentages of people who are acting in certain ways. We'll replay that through the storefront and then spit out data with very specific statistics on response times and where code started hanging up and things like that. And again, that's where it goes back to working with you guys to say, hey, from an infrastructure side of things, it looks like we're going to be solid. From a response time side of things, it looks like there's a couple of key areas we need to focus on and maybe ease up some bottlenecks here and there. Some of it could be third-party integrations, some of it could be core code, whatever it is. We can hand that back and really work together to make sure that when that event happens, specifically the clients that are coming in and behaving the way that this particular merchant has clients coming in, I think that's it's invaluable. And again, everything goes back to return on investment and making sure that you're prepared for something, preparing for a successful event, right? So yeah, sorry to jump in on you, but
no, that's fine. And it is about exactly that. It's our job to know our customer's customer, if you like. So knowing how they interact with the website, that's our bread and butter, and we can replay that back at scale. And the cloud technology allows us to do that. Gone are the days of having to do a performance test on a much smaller subset of infrastructure because you couldn't afford to run an equivalently sized technology stack. What we can do now is almost replicate a customer's production environment and run those real user journeys at scale, at true volume, at the same size of the production stack. So we know exactly what's going to happen when the promotion hits. And that's really been invaluable for the last 18 months of allowing our customers to get through this period with the record-breaking numbers that they've seen. Yeah, thanks for the input, Adrian.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thanks, Tim.
No,
thanks, Adrian. Okay, so as an employee of Webscale, I'm not sure we should be really announcing this, but we do every year we release a Global Ecommerce Security Report, and ours is due out next month. Adrian, as you're across the pond, I can ask you to do this. Is there any chance you could give us a sneak peek into some of the key findings and trends in advance of that report coming out?
Of course. And I just happen to have
dun,
some
dun,
collateral. Dun, 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 right? What are the odds that I would have this ready at this particular time for this question? It's amazing.
You can't show it in the US, though, right?
Now, this is a sneak peek, right? It's a report that we do put out. Extremely proud of it, right? And you can see, I didn't ask, you can see it full screen, right? It should say about the report. Justine?
Yeah, it's visible.
Yeah, I can. Sorry, I was on mute.
Okay.
Yeah.
The most
No,
used
it's all
term
good.
last
Oh,
year.
see, I thought we were going to make it through without us. Sorry, I was on mute. Getting back to the report, right? So the Global Ecommerce Security Report, it's our annual review of different things. It talks about trends, it talks about technologies, it goes through the overall business impact of security and its impact on the e-commerce industry. Like I mentioned before when we opened up, it's a huge focus for us. E-commerce really is its own animal within different websites and static sites that are being pushed out there. So we treat it differently, right? So and everything that you see here, these three beautiful pie charts, I mean, all really just to show you that the assessments and the opinions that we gathered are really all based on observations that we've had managing just thousands of online storefronts on the public cloud. But it also includes input shared by our customers, our partners, our prospects, anybody that was a respondent from around the world that on the survey that we launched in December. So it's incredibly fresh data. Gave us a chance to do a look back on the previous year and how things had gone. And the other thing I like too is as far as the profile of respondents, mostly we're at the VP and executive level on up. And if you look at the segments of online traffic, it covered a variety of different sectors. So we're talking storefronts that can receive around 50,000 visitors per month or so, all the way up to those receiving well over 1 million. So once a report does come out, I think it's going to be really inclusive and have just a great variety of data from a variety of market segments that that make up the total findings. This is just obviously more of a sneak peek that we're showing. The report when it does come out is going to be much more comprehensive, but for obvious reasons, right? Since the holiday season is a prominent part of e-commerce business, we wanted to make sure and ask a few questions on the security concerns during the holiday season. So I think the biggest takeaway from all of this is all of the different forms of attacks. They're all on the rise compared to the same place in 2019. So we're talking everything from bot attacks to denial of service attempts to back-end database injections. Everything is all up significantly. And the biggest one that jumps out, the bar almost clearly to the right, is the mage card attacks, right? So I mean, this is really what jumps out significantly. I mean, these typically come from groups who target online shopping cart systems, specifically the Magento systems, and they're intended to steal customer payment data, card information, things like that. So just overall, there was a lot of movement in the Magento ecosystem last year. On top of the disruption that the pandemic caused, we had the Magento 1 platform going end of life. There was a lot of storefronts that were left vulnerable, as well as some that had moved to Magento 2, but maybe had less than ideal security measures to protect them from attacks like these. So, there's whenever a disruption event comes about, it's an opportunity for some of these bad actors to come in, and whether they're launching, bad bots that take more of an automated approach, or if it's a DDoS attack that's more of a mass flood of traffic coming in meant to take something down, or a little bit more specific attack like a mage card attack targeted at at skimming payment card info. Regardless of what it was, again, there was just a lot of people that were left vulnerable, and that's why we saw a lot of these attacks on the rise. So with the rise of the attacks, I think the good thing is it did come with a renewed focus on merchants really securing themselves from these bad guys that we're talking about. So, I won't go through every single one of the statistics. I think all of the numbers are self-explanatory, but I do want to highlight one thing on here. So 72% of the people said that the number one challenge around hosting is security. And the highlight here is that not all security products are alike, especially security products that are bundled with a hosting package. So some of the same people that said that they had already invested in a WAF, which is a web application firewall, also said that security is still a challenge. So that's because WAF is really only as good as the people who are managing it for you. Like we've talked about before, nobody really develops a business model and launches an online brand or any type of retail brand and says, hey, I can't wait to get in the business of managing hosting and making sure that my storefront is secure. So if a hosting provider boasts that they include a web application firewall, but yet are not doing anything to create custom rule sets for your specific store, for your specific application, it's not much more than a digital paperweight. I mean, it's good to have it there. It's a nice to have, but there's a certain level of management and knowledge and consistent focus on the changing ways that these sophisticated attacks are coming through. And they need to be managed 24/7, 365. So, I mean, if you take nothing else away from all of this, I would just say, just to remember one thing. I mean, you don't want to wait until a storefront has been a victim of an attack to then deploy a fully managed security solution. So, I'm talking a security solution that's developed by specialists in e-commerce, a security solution that's specifically designed and tailored to an application like Magento that understands that there's a segment of the market looking to penetrate e-commerce defenses and use their knowledge of the application to do that. And just overall, I mean, the hit to a brand, the brand reputation, a lot of times these attacks and data breaches become public. And I mean, it's devastating to a brand. I mean, imagine a retailer that you constantly go to and make purchases from, that you just find out that, all of your data has now been compromised. It makes you think twice about the brand. You don't want to put yourself in that position. So again, it's never a good idea to wait until something happens to then deploy a solution, because you're not just fixing security concerns. Now you got some damage control on the brand to do. So just a really quick sneak peek. Didn't want to drain any of these slides too much, but I thought that was a pretty comprehensive look at who responded to it, the type of personas and the type of people that we got answers from. And we were really, happy to see as many people involved in responding to it as possible. And I think we got some really good data. I can't wait for it to come out.
Thanks, Adrian. Some really, really good insights there. So, yeah, a nice sneak peek into what is coming. So guys, finally, before we open up for questions, I have one last request of you. So Adrian, Tim, Jed, would you mind spending just a minute each, talking about why Webscale and Eclipse working together as one team is important for your clients?
Ooh, that's a good one. What we call it, would you say 60? Okay, I'm 10 seconds into it. Sorry.
Bell here.
Yeah. All right, ring the bell when it's time. Simply put, we call it a triangle of support, right? There's a reason why this group is here as a panel. We have responsibilities in hosting, security, creating, a perimeter defense at the edge, and also managing an environment so it can be scalable to do the things that we talked about on here. But none of that is really done completely without the help of a really solid e-commerce developer that does amazing quality as far as the development of code, the manipulation of code, the deployment, the changes that need to be deployed for the ever-changing requests. So we call it that triangle support. Really, it's the hosting provider, cloud automation, security company at one point. It's the agency that's involved in development and the brand experience at the other. And obviously the client is at the tip. And I think if we treat it that way every time, there's successful launches and just a ongoing successful experience for the end user, for the brand and their clients.
Brilliant. Thanks, Adrian.
60 seconds.
Jed, to you next.
60 seconds it is. I think Adrian summarized it really well. It's like, from my angle it is, and like Adrian, you showed one of the statistics that really rang a bell with me. Like 53% of customers get impacted by, all of the security issues as well. And listening to these statistics and just thinking about, how much it's like our wavelengths, that we talk on the same wavelengths, and we care about the same things, we value the same things. I think it's very important to have a technology hosting, international hosting software providers that you can talk to. You can just pick up the phone and call them and get the information from them at any time of the day. And you guys operate 24/7, so do our clients. So that's why I think it works really well for us.
And I'll just wrap up here in a quick 60 seconds. So I love the triangle of support.
You've got 2 minutes.
2 minutes even. I'll do my best here, Justine, to fill that time. So triangle of support is similar to what we call it a one team approach. And it's the only way we know how to work. We've been doing it for 20 years. And what that means to us is working hand in hand with our customers and our partners, making sure that we are embedded into their businesses, how they work, how they operate, their true values. And we strive to be viewed as part of our customers' integral teams. We get a real kick out of it. It's why we get out of bed in the morning. That's one of my key phrases. So to conclude on that, really, stick to what you're great at. We're a great digital experience organization. We want to find brilliant partners that can help us fill the gaps that we are not brilliant at. And companies like Webscale, partners like Webscale, allow us to focus on that development and not have to worry too much around the scaling and the architecture and the infrastructure that goes behind it, and all of the things that we've talked about in this webinar. And Adrian's over there in Texas, that global reach as well. We're over here in the cold UK at the moment, and the geographic reach and the ability for organisations like Webscale to give us those economies of scale makes it a no-brainer for us.
That's great, guys. I really, really appreciate it. Sounds like a nice marriage coming together. So we do have some questions, and if people do want to ask more questions, please pop it in the chat or in the Q&A. And I'm just going to open these up. I don't mind who answers, take it in turns, take on the best subject, but one from the crowd is from a gentleman called Dennis. As we know, the e-commerce business, it has grown during 2020, but also the cyber attacks for e-commerce, it has grown at the same time. I think we've touched on this in some of our answers, but his question is, how should we increase the security against them in our e-commerce platforms?
I'll quickly take that one, shall I?
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Just super vigilance. I think we've hinted at that all the way through the presentation. Being aware of where your vulnerable points are. Don't just test once a year. Constantly poke around and make sure that you've got complete visibility of where your security breaches might be, and find a partner that could do that for you if you haven't got that technical capability in-house. But yeah, staying on top of all the releases, upgrade all of your technology, make sure you're constantly testing. And like Adrian said when we talked about WAF, don't just turn it on and leave it there. Invest some time in learning how it works, how to teach it, how to protect you from these bad actors, because if you don't, they'll be one step ahead of you.
Thanks, Tim. I think
really quick. Hold on, Justine. So really quick. I think here's what's funny. So this just happened, wasn't planned, obviously. So Tim answered at the same time I did. I think we look at security, and this is, again, it just establishes the importance of working together, hosting provider, security provider, and developer, because a lot of Tim's answers are to the development and the lockdown on the code side of things, and there's responsibilities that the developer has to do those things. From our standpoint, it's more on the web application firewall side of things and securing the environment itself. I think it just goes, the fact that we both answered at the same time really goes to the fact that it's a lot about who you choose to work with and making sure that you're working with people that have management, like a fully managed approach to your security solution. Like Tim said, not just spinning up a firewall and letting it sit there. So there's a management that goes into it, and then obviously making sure you're creating that perimeter of defenses on top of what's going on to lock down on the development side of things. So I just wanted to add that. I thought that was a good point.
Brilliant. But I do think I've got a couple now to direct at you. So this is from Adam. So how does Webscale make hosting look so effortless? Is that a fact, or is that a reality, or a fact?
Okay, so here's the thing. It's a reality, and this is something people may have heard me say before. We look at the public cloud as a utility within the solution, not the solution itself. We've seen a lot of people recreate issues in existing static or legacy hosting environments and recreate those issues in the public cloud and think, oh, because I moved to AWS or Google Cloud, that was the answer to my problems. And that's not the case. Again, it goes back to the knowledge of the infrastructure itself, the knowledge of the application that's on it. And what we've been able to do is take a software delivered approach to automate all of that. And the people that we have in support that are in these different parts of the world that can provide this follow the sun support are really managing a sophisticated tool to manage the application on these cloud environments. So I'd like to say it's effortless. I mean, I know our support and customer success teams would say otherwise. They put in a whole lot of work to make sure, the end users are safe. But here's the thing: it should always look effortless to a client. I can't say this enough. Like, if whatever it is that you built your company to do, you should focus on that, and it should be effortless in the sense of having to manage hosting and cloud providers and learn the new AWS updates, et cetera. So I can go on that for hours.
Great answer. Great answer. Thank you very much for that. So the next questions come in. Can I use my existing on-prem software in the cloud?
Yeah, I can take that one. So absolutely. There's just a couple of caveats that you need to look at around making sure it's architected in a way that can take advantage of some of the cloud technology. For instance, the ability to manage sessions across multiple servers, because once you're on the cloud, you don't need to worry about individual servers. They come and go as the architecture scales up and down. So there might be some intricacies around session management and other areas of code where it needs to be put into containers to allow us to scale those things out. But we've not come across anything so far that has given us any challenges of moving those workloads into the cloud at all.
That's super to know. Another couple of questions. So why is cloud hosting better than on-prem?
How long have you got?
60 seconds. 60
that's
seconds.
another hour. Tim, you want to take that one, or you want me to do it?
Yeah, and I'll just very quickly and give you some time. So just really after your answer again, Adrian, it's we've got customers that are just massive advocates of the move that they made to the cloud, because it just gives them that ability to scale, that platform of elasticity that allows them to trade their website to record-breaking levels. It's really just much more of an agile platform. Gone are the days of having to wait for servers to be built and provisioned, hardware going wrong. All of that's taken care of. On top of that, you've obviously got the enhanced security and performance that goes with it. So it's a true investment in scaling out to meet your customers.
Brilliant. I've got two more questions. So Adrian, I'm going to jump in here because I'd like to get these two answered. So how much more is a PWA build?
I guess I can try picking this one up. PWA, well, if you take Magento, that's kind of like, it's part of it. It's part of the service that is provided. And if you get the right team working on it and they keep that in the back of their heads, that application, once it's finished, is going to be PWA ready. I think the caveat here is that PWA is brilliant when it comes to, Google devices, Android devices. The problem comes a little bit, and it gets a little bit more challenging when you're trying to use it on iOS. But usually, if it's done all okay, you can quickly turn the PWA application into an actual mobile app and host it on App Store as well. So there are workarounds. This requires a little bit more work to host it on App Store and convert the PWA application completely. But really, we have done it in the past, and it's never so much of a hurdle. It's more of just something to be aware of, and just keep it in the back of your head while you're going ahead with it.
Brilliant.
Yeah, from the infrastructure side, really quick. So with PWA, I think the beauty of it is, I think I've called Webscale like PWA hipsters before. Like, we were doing decoupled architecture before it was a thing, before it was cool. And we've always operated as a software delivered model out in front of the environment. So the emergence of these PWA technologies and these different presentation layer and front end technologies is really nothing new. The beauty of it is we can, again, by using public cloud solutions as a utility within the entire ecosystem of what you're doing, it's really easy to deploy these different segments of it, so you don't have single points of failure. So from a hosting side of things, we can do everything from deploying the front end from its own service, so it's not consuming resources from anything that's the back end is running on, to even caching and delivering it as microsites from our software itself, which we're excited to already be doing now. So just goes back to working with companies like this that have been PWA and headless friendly and stay on the cutting edge of technology as these builds progress.
Sounds like a passionate technology for both of you. So final question. So This one is definitely for you, Adrian. So when will the e-commerce security report be published, and where will I be able to find it?
I don't know if I'm allowed to divulge such information.
I know that much.
Yeah, we're extremely proud of it. I mean, we are looking to launch it in February. I would rather, everything be complete and done before we rush a launch. So I know initially we wanted it in the first week of February, but I know it's coming sometime next month. There will be several, PR blasts, social blasts. I would follow both Eclipse and Webscale on every social media platform you can. And trust me, the minute that it launches, we'll make a big deal about it. So.
Okay. So, Jed, Tim, Adrian, just a big thank you for today. I think it was an amazing session. We learned lots. You're very, very passionate and knowledgeable about your topics. And you can see why you've both, come together in a wonderful marriage to deliver outstanding service to customers. So I think you both have the same objective, which is just fantastic. So again, thank you very much for your time. And for everyone who attends, good day, good morning, good evening, depending where you've joined from. So we really, really do appreciate your time. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Justine, as well.